Hi, everyone, and welcome inside Desert Financial Arena for the Devil Source Postgame Show. I'm Gabby Chernoff. He's Chris Cartman. We're here following ASU basketball's regular season ending 85-57 loss to number 9 Texas Tech. With this loss, it makes it 9 straight home losses for Bobby Hurley and the Sun Devils as they drop to 13-18 overall on the 2024-25 season, as well as 4-16 in Big 12 play. Chris, a really good opponent. Bobby Hurley opened up his press conference. That was the first thing he said after a game. Said that was a really good team, and it was very evident tonight. What'd you see from this game?
Yeah, number 9 team in the country, well coached, good on both sides of the ball. ASU played well in the first half, hung in there again. That's been a trend that we've seen in recent weeks, but the problem is 40 minutes, very tough to put together when you're missing some of your key pieces. Adam Miller didn't play due to an oblique injury, also has a hip injury. Jaden Quainance didn't play due to a knee. So they're down to 6 guys basically with a few minutes here and there from Bobby Hurley at most. Bobby Hurley Sr. was unhappy with his team's defensive intensity. They only got a couple of turnovers generated, and steals, I should say, and then also not enough second chance opportunities. ASU had good offense. Bashir Jihad had a really good game. Josan Sandin had good minutes. Alston Mason's been a good player for ASU, but when you're not able to go to your bench and you don't have enough energy to sustain yourself, these are the results that are going to happen, and not really surprised to see the outcome be what it was.
And this is kind of a theme that's been rampant throughout the entire course of the season. ASU able to kind of hang on in the first half, even the start of the second half, and then things just get out of hand, and we see almost 30-point losses like we did tonight. Bobby Hurley called this season and all of those things haunting in his press conference. He said that the fans deserve better, everyone deserves better, and that they should be winning at home. As I said earlier, 9 straight home loss, tied for the most in program history in that column. Chris, what do you make of all of that?
The Big 12 is very difficult. We knew that going in. ASU was going to need to have some breaks and get development from its young players in order to be able to overcome those things. It's one of the more under-resourced teams in the conference, and they found out the hard way when they had a bunch of injuries that piled up between Quainance's ankle and his knee, Sandin going through the ankle injury, and then a bunch of other guys having some spot issues, including the Miller situation in recent weeks with the hip and then the oblique. That's bad. And then, of course, they had BJ Freeman with the disciplinary issues and others who have not always kept it on the straight and narrow. And that you're not going to be able to be successful if you're a team like ASU, given those types of challenges. They've been unlucky, but also Bobby Hurley, as we've talked about in some of our other coverage, there's things that he needs to be able to get better at and that have been consistently plaguing the Sun Devils when they get into the tougher matchups against better opponents.
Yeah, and one of the more haunting things about this season, just the sheer lack of players that have been available to this team because of injury. 2, namely tonight, Adam Miller and Jaden Quainance. You briefly touched on their injuries, but Hurley had a little bit more to say about kind of what they look like as far as Tuesday's start of the Big 12 tournament looks like.
Well, Adam Miller is a possibility to play in the Big 12 tournament on Tuesday. He had to ask out of that Arizona game after just the first defensive possession, 30 seconds in, strained oblique. Those types of injuries are very problematic for guys. You don't just bounce back and all of a sudden you're doing well on top of the hip that he already had. Quainance, according to Hurley, is not going to be ready to play. Season's probably over. That's a really disappointing thing. He's as valuable to ASU as pretty much any player with his defensive presence. We saw JT Toppin tonight have a strong showing, as he did when they played in Lubbock, when he had 41 points. That's a load to handle. For ASU to go to Kansas City having not won more than 1 game in a row throughout the entire Big 12 schedule, to be expected to do anything there of significance is highly unlikely. And so this season is expected to conclude in an extremely disappointing fashion, which Bobby Hurley basically hinted at today.
Season not quite over yet, though, as you mentioned, the Big 12 tournament. A couple different opponents that ASU could play, awaiting the result of the Utah-BYU game to kind of determine which one it would be. But it starts on Tuesday over in Kansas City. What does that kind of look like, big picture, for ASU right now?
Yeah, they're the number 15 seed. The top 8 teams get a bye. The top 4 teams get 2 byes, basically. So if you're in the bottom 8, you have just a way tougher road to hoe. And ASU is going to play the 10 seed. That's either going to be Kansas State or TCU. ASU's played both of those teams well. TCU's had injuries. Frankie Collins also out for the season. So ASU can win a game, potentially, but could ASU win 2 or 3 or 4? Very unlikely to expect anything like that. And so the season's almost assuredly going to come to an end in disappointing fashion next week.
And with the end of the season approaching, of course, a lot of fans up in arms about Bobby Hurley and his future with the team. We recorded a very extensive podcast kind of laying out all the options, especially from an economical standpoint. That one's posted on the Sanctuary as well as on the Sun Devil Source page for our VIP subscribers. But he was asked about it. He said, I'm just trying to still take it one day at a time. You asked about any conversations that he's potentially had with athletic director Graham Rossini, and he said, I want to keep those to myself right now. So what does that look like as of now?
It was interesting. Rossini, we saw him within several minutes of the press conference ending with Bobby Hurley. That's something that we have not seen in recent weeks. I have not noticed him personally in the locker room media area. Now, he has been at some games. We saw that ASU and Graham Rossini decided to fire Natasha Adair, the women's basketball coach, one day after their Big 12 tournament ended. So you would imagine if ASU were to make a decision to go in a different direction with Bobby Hurley having 1 year on his contract, it would probably happen in a similar time frame. As we've talked about and that you alluded to, there are a lot of economic pressures that are significant to ASU athletics right now. People can check out all of our coverage to find out all the details, but Dillingham is getting an extension and a couple $1 million raise. ASU kept its coordinators. ASU is going to pay $18 million to its athletes after this house settlement. There's an additional scholarship costs that are mounting. And then if it were to fire Bobby Hurley, that'd be a $4 million hit on top of what happened with Natasha Adair. Then you'd have to go out, if you're ASU, and hire a whole new coaching staff and try to make that all work within your budget, which is already underwater in recent years because of the NCAA investigation, the dismissals of Ray Anderson and Herm Edwards, or at least the parting of ways of those guys who are still making money on the books at ASU. There is no indication at this point that would lead us to believe that there's a high likelihood of Bobby Hurley losing his job. Doesn't mean that it won't happen, but we'll have to kind of wait and see on that. And there is a possibility that he could be back. He has 1 more year on his existing contract. So they could decide to go into that last year, or they could decide to try to make some sort of an extension that could potentially help him with recruiting. Not sure what's going to happen, Gabby. We'll have to stay tuned and find out.
Yeah, certainly a lot brewing for the future of this ASU men's basketball program. Maybe Bobby Hurley will look to fight off some of the demons that have been haunting him as of late, but we'll have you covered through it all. And of course, the Big 12 tournament that starts on Tuesday. So until then, Gabby Chernoff and Chris Cartman here from Desert Financial Arena. Thanks for watching.